Okay, in this video, it's going to be quick. I'm going to show you how to change the front brake pads on a Mustang GT. This is a 2003 model. We're going to change the front brake pads, and I'll also have to show you how to change the rotors, otherwise known as brake discs. So the first thing you want to do is loosen your nuts on the wheel just there, just a little bit, and then you want to jack it up. And then you want to take the nuts off now they're loose once it's on the jack. So do that as the first step. Okay, once you've taken your wheel off, move your dog out the way because he gets in the way, and grab a socket wrench. You want, for a Mustang GT 2003 anyway, you want a 12mm wrench here. And what you want to do, this bolt here, you want to take it to the right, lefty loosey, righty tighty, but since the bolt is backwards you want to do the opposite, so you want to go that way there. And there is another one down here too, and that's 2 total. So undo these 2 bolts. You might want a little bit of lubricant to take those off. I mean, they've been getting a lot of dirt, so I've got this 99-cent store special here. It just works just as well as WD-40 at loosening those a little bit. And take those off. Don't bother around with imperial units, just make sure you get your 12mm wrench here, otherwise you're going to start rounding these off, and when you round those off you're never going to get them out. So make sure it's 12mm or whichever measurement you're using for your vehicle. Okay, so once you got your 12mm wrench on the end here, you also want a 15mm spanner or wrench, whatever you call this. I call it a spanner. And you want to keep this held here, so when you undo this one here, I can just do that with one hand, the bolt stays still. As you can see, the bolt there is also attached to this one, so when you turn this here, you can see it turns with it. So you just want your 15mm wrench here to keep this bit still as you undo that, and that's the same with the bottom one down here too. So let's go ahead and take those 2 off. Okay, so once you've taken your 12mm bolts out, put them on the floor in celebration. The next bit is to take this brake caliper off. It's this piece here, not this piece here. You'll probably notice, because the pistons have come right out, that it's pretty shit impossible to get off with your hand. So what you might want to do is just get a rubber mallet or something, and this bit here, just give it a gentle tap and it will come right off there. Okay, so once you give it a couple knocks there, it should just come right off there. These are your brake pistons here. These kind of come out the more wear that is on your pads, so these come out here. When we put our new brake pads in, you're going to need to push these both back that way, otherwise there's not enough room here for the brake disc or brake rotor and the pads, so we'll need to do that next. You'll probably also notice it's dangling here. You can probably rest that just up here for now, or tie it up here, or whatever you want to do with it. If you look inside now, these are your very worn out brake pads. There's not much left on there, probably a couple of millimeters, and one at the front and one at the back as well. I don't know about all cars, but the one at the back seems to wear more. And here is your brake disc or brake rotor, and that's what the pads press against to slow the car down. So what we want to do is change these bad boys out for some nice new ones here. So that's what we're going to do next, but I will show you quickly, I don't need to do it, how to also change these rotors too. Okay, so getting these rotors off here, you will see behind, pretty hard to see, there's a 15mm bolt right there, and also one right there too. If you pop those both off, this whole structure will come loose. You can see it's just this piece here holding this in. You can pull that right off and slot a new one in. Simple as that, really. The only reason I'm not showing you is because I can't be bothered, and I think it sounds pretty easy to do. So sorry about that. So the next thing we're going to do is compress our pistons here inward, that way, so we can fit our pads and our disc in there. Okay, so compressing these pistons in, you will notice you probably can't do it with your hands, and I've seen some people put this back on the rotor here and put a couple bolts in without the pads in, and use one of these here that gets your nuts off the wheels on the other end to try and press the pistons back in that way. You could do all that, or you could go down to Walmart or Poundland or wherever you like to go and get one of these 4-inch C-clamps. So 4 inches there. Depending what vehicle you're driving, your mileage may vary, but a 4-inch one should cover most vehicles. So what you want to do is put your C-clamp over the piston and the frame just behind it and compress the piston in. Okay, so once you've attached your C-clamp here, it's pretty sturdy. I got my little bolt thread going in the hole there, and it's also on the other side there. When you do the other one, you'll notice you have a little bolt in the way, but I managed to use this tiny area here, and that also worked. But you can see it's in there, and what we really do is just tighten this. It's pretty hard to do with one hand, but I assure you when you turn it to the right, this piston will slowly go in, and it will almost be flush. It will just be a few millimeters out there. When it gets too hard to turn, you'll probably realize it's done, but don't keep going, otherwise you'll just break it. When you're working with this, make sure you don't pull this out, otherwise you might have a bit of a nasty time putting it back together. So make sure it's nice and sturdy before you start compressing the piston in. Okay, halfway, we've done one, now we're on to the second one. You can see that's pretty much all the way in now. It's not exactly flush, but that's as far as it will go, so make sure you don't go past that point. Okay, so once you've compressed the pistons back in here, it should look something like that. So you have a nice bit of room there to fit in your rotor and your 2 new pads, which are about to go in now. If you just bought this and you don't have a use for it anymore, you can make a nice rope swing from the tree. It's really annoying buying things that you're only going to use once, but it might come in use. So, what you want to do now is put in both your new brake pads, and they might be a little tricky to get in because they're so bulky. So the idea is really you just line up the top. You can see there's a little notch there, and you just fit the new one in there. Same in the bottom. You took your old ones out, so it's pretty self-explanatory how to get a new one in. It's pretty hard with one hand, but you'll see in a sec when I've got them both in. Okay, there we go. Both new brake pads are in. Looks nice and chunky now. So this is going to fit in our newly depressed piece there we've just made with our C-clamp, and we just put it back on where we found it. This is usually the fun part, putting everything back together again. Not really. So you can see we've depressed those far enough so we can easily get our 12mm bolts back in the top and the bottom again. So now we're just putting back everything back where it came from. So let's go do that. Okay, so I've put the 12mm bolts back in there. Give it a little spin. Looks pretty good. You can see our new pads are ready for some action. So let's just put the wheel back on. Okay, so the wheel's back on. You can see your new pads in there. Nice and new and shiny looking. So that'll give you another 1,000 miles of some crazy driving. Okay, cool. So toss the old ones away, get a cup of tea, and celebrate in style.